number 2, public comment. If we have any members of the public that would like to come forward, this time we'll accept comments. Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 3, possible action and approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. We have 2. We have the approval of the previous meeting, special meeting on August 9th, 2019. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes? Is this the one that?
No, this one's okay.
Okay.
Madam Chair, can I just be heard on that? I need
Yes.
to get something on the record on those minutes.
Okay.
NRS 241.035 subsection 1 subsection E requires that minutes of a meeting be approved within 45 days of the meeting. There is an exception to that, and the exception is if there is good cause shown why they were not approved within that time, that is acceptable under the law. So as a policy of the district attorney's office, we just like to make a short statement of the good cause when we are outside that 45 days, which on this item we are. The August 9th meeting was an extensive meeting, as I'm sure you saw looking through that. It lasted for several hours, so the resulting minutes were very long. The clerk's office staffing just did not allow for the completion of the minutes within that 45 days. There was only one regular meeting in between that time and now. The regular August minutes were prepared, but because of the length of this meeting, they were not able to be prepared. So that's the good cause that we would state for the record for going outside the 45 days. Thank you.
Thank you.
With that said, I'll move to approve the minutes from the August 9th meeting.
I'll second.
Everybody in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. All right, item number 3B, a possible action to approve the minutes of the previous regular meeting on September 26, 2019. Has everybody had a chance to review them, and do we have any changes on this one? Where is that one? I do want to note that on page 1 of the regular meeting minutes, item 3A, approval of the minutes of the previous meeting, July 22nd, 2019, should say August 22nd, 2019.
That was the only thing that I saw that needed to be changed, so.
Yes. Yeah.
It's fine.
On the agenda, it was right.
So I will move to approve the minutes of the September 26th meeting. With the correction to I'm assuming that's just a typo on this sheet, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Am I allowed to go out of order? I just wanted to introduce you.
You are allowed to go out of order.
Okay. All right. So I wanted to just say that we have been assigned a new DA, the DA, Jason Woodbury, and so I don't remember like when that took place. Over the last couple weeks, we did the shift. So I just wanted to welcome you too, and welcome Mr. Colgrove to his first meeting as well. Okay. So we'll move on to item number 4. Possible action for presentation, discussion, and possible action regarding submitting a $7,500 grant application to the fiscal year 2020 State Collection Development Grant Program available from the Nevada State Library Archives and Public Records.
Thank you. Diane Baker, Department Business Manager for the record. You do have in front of you as late material a draft copy of the state application form for collection development. These are state funds that are available each year of the biennium through an allocation by a formula at the state level. And so when we made up the agenda item, it was possible that at 75, the actual formula amount is different, and that's what you should see on there. I think it's $7,015 is, yeah, that's what you should see on the application. So we wanted to make sure we had sufficient information so you knew what was going to be presented. The application is due November 1st. And so there'll be some additional information that we will be adding to that to flesh out some of the categories. But you do see the basics of that. Amy Lauder, who is the Collection Development Manager, has put this together. So if you have any questions on either side, the process side or the content, we'd be glad to entertain those.
For the record, Julie Balderson, I have a question about how, if you could just explain a little bit more, your needs analysis and how the need was determined.
It's always a pretty brief grant. So usually it's kind of the same way we determine, often it's mostly the same ways we determine the needs for a collection at any other time of the year. We see what's circulating, what we have, what we don't have, what people are asking for. If there's any things that we, like if I talk about gaps in the collection, we have a small foreign video collection. We have almost nothing from Africa. There's a great growing popularity in Korean and Japanese film, if I'm talking about this particular project, that we have not been able to keep up with. Because it is a growing area, but it's not top of the list. You gotta have the Marvel movies first. So that's what we spend our regular money on. And then some of the other things that would be nice to have, we can supplement with this kind of money, if that makes sense.
It does. And how would we know when a patron is asking? Is this someone who has to be physically in person? Is it done based on search bar information?
Not necessarily. Yeah, so we get requests. We do get requests in person. People are looking for something. It's not on the shelf. That kind of thing. I have forms where people can email us or put in a request for types of things, either specific items or types of things that they're looking for. I can look at what people are placing holds on, if there's a lot of holds on things that we should have but don't. Things that are circulating a lot, we might need extra copies of. Just there's all kinds of things.
And are they given equal weight?
Not necessarily. It's a judgment call. It's always a judgment call. But specific requests are pretty heavily weighted over just like stuff that I think is neat, but nobody else has ever expressed any interest in, you know? So.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So what we're asking for you today is to approve the action is to approve the application to be submitted to the State Library and Archives, and then with the final application, when we have it in a final form, it does have a place for the library board chair or their designee to sign. And it has very quick turnaround on this particular program.
And what is the difference between language learning books and foreign language books? Talking textbooks versus realia?
Yeah, so for that, that would be like books about learning a language versus like a book in the language. Yeah.
And a book in the language, not necessarily leveled at beginner, intermediate?
It could be, but
what would you be targeting?
Probably mostly children's. We already have a pretty large Spanish collection. I don't think that we have a very high demand for adult books in other foreign languages at this time. But there is, especially for both children and for adults learning, sometimes like to read like Harry Potter, a book they're familiar with in a different language. So just gives us options.
Right, thank you.
So does it say on the application specifically the amount of money? I didn't see it on the application.
It does not. On this particular page, I have a PDF in my email that I was referencing, which is the not that one. Shoot.
We,
There's like 4 different documents they
yeah,
sent
there are
us.
multiple documents in the application. We received the allocation in an email, email and an attachment letter with the, this year's allocation.
And you said that was 7,015 versus the 7,500
Correct.
that was
Correct.
listed?
Yeah, the 7,500 is the, one of the base amounts that shows in the Nevada revised statutes. However, the actual allotment is based on the amount that is available to the state library to disperse to public libraries.
So I just want to say that I'm a fan of projects like this getting, language opportunities, especially languages that we might not get as much exposure to, given our location geographically. So I really like this project. And that said, I would move to approve the State Collection Development Grant application for fiscal year 2020 as submitted.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we'll move on to item number 5, the library director reports.
All right, Diane Baker, for the record, this is the kind of our handoff timeframe for doing the library director reports. Being the first meeting for our new library director, we'll be going over the different information here together. So I did want to indicate, let's see, was trying to make sure I had all of the items up here. Was looking for my other widget. I'll have to pull that one here in just a minute. So for the fiscal 19 year, I know at the last meeting, the September meeting, I'd indicated that was likely going to be the last year or last time for the year. For that, from fiscal 19, it turned out from the finance department, because of the new system that we've migrated over to, there were still a number of transactions that hadn't hit. So just for completion, we do have that information available for you today, and I was actually going to try to get that one widget up there, but it's not cooperating at this point. So what you do have a copy of the backup of the widget, and then also the backup of the information of the different budget accounts, which starts with the General Fund 101 and goes through the gift and the the gift, the grants, and then the last part will be the Adams Hub that we're wrapping up. I did want to indicate just generally that we have closed out the budget accounts where, and especially in the salary, we are reverting some money in salary savings, although not as much as the city thought we were going to return, but we were able to use some of the extra in temporary salaries because of the vacancies, the number of vacancies we had over the last year. And the grants and the gift fund wrapped up actually at the same levels that we had last time. We're closing out this, hopefully within the next week or so, we will be completely closed out with the Adams Hub program, with the last of the donation being returned to the Hop and May Adams Foundation. There were a few straggling items that hadn't been accounted for. So that should give you the closeout there. Then
So
we
with-
can, I'm sorry, go
Just a
ahead.
question. On the Adams Hub, when was that donation given to us? Was it March or May?
It's May. I believe it was May 6th is, the actual start was at May 6th, 2018 was the first, and then it was on the anniversary of that time of when the agreement was originally set.
Thanks.
Okay, so looking into fiscal 20, the widget is working for that, and we do have the information available. You can see the breakout of revenues. I believe I mentioned before, in general, over the year, the main change that you would see in the revenues would be as we are able to get additional grant funds, such as the state collection money, that particular piece of the pie here, or the actual revenues, you'll see a change in that over time as we're able to get additional funds. And then the Friends of the Library, the donation from the Friends of the Library usually comes in January. So at that point, you would see an additional change in the revenues. From that, you're just seeing the basics going through on the graph, the different graphs of how things are going along. The blue being the budgeted amount, the green is the expenditures as we're getting through them. So everything is just working up incrementally at this point. The backup on the budget, again, we're with the new system, so you're seeing the information in a different type of spreadsheet, but these spreadsheets, they do give us the ability to present them in multiple ways. If you're seeing, this mimics what you were seeing in the past, and if there are other aspects of the budget that you have are interested in seeing, that is one thing. With the new system, we have more flexibility on the outputs that we can do, as opposed to the old system that we had. Everything is going along at the rate that we are expecting at this point. And if you had any questions on the specific categories, I would be glad to take those questions.
Are you guys good? Yep. All right, thank you.
The new version is so much easier to read.
Yeah,
It really is.
It's, yeah, we had no control over the font, over the size of the font, over the output. It's,
Yeah.
here's your report.
All right, we'll move on to item number 5B, the presentation report. Am I on the right? Yeah, I am. Of the library director. So we welcome Dr. Cole Grover. So excited to have you.
Super. Thank you so much, Chair Long. And in fact, I want to start off by specifically thanking each of the trustees for the trust that you've placed in me in bringing me on board, and also extend a vote of thanks to our district attorney, Jason Woodbury. Thank you for coming on board. That speaks very highly of the library, not that this is a marketing move, but if the district attorney thinks it's important, it must be important. Thank you, sir. My goodness. You'll see a list of some details there. The first one is very vague introductory comments and vision statement, especially as I was looking back through the minutes from the last Board of Trustees meeting. I think we've touched on a lot of that. What I wanted to make crystal clear right up front is I think we've all been, maybe it's not politically correct to use the word victim, but I think we've all been victim of folks that came in and thought they knew more than they did and decided to start making big sweeping changes before they knew what they didn't know. And that's precisely where I'm at right now, which is somewhere between 2 and 3 weeks into this position, I'm still very much wide-eyed looking at all of the things that are going on. I think I was talking with a colleague, and I think I used the example of there was like an old childhood's rhyme about the bumblebee, how the bumblebee doesn't know that it's the weight mass ratios are just way out of whack and it shouldn't be able to fly, and so it keeps flying. And I continue to be really amazed and impressed by what I'm seeing happening every day in this library that is arguably understaffed and overworked, and yet the staff are performing miracles on a daily basis, and I really don't want to let them know that that's surprising in any way, because we really can't afford to have that stop. But I think it is actually thrilling to me, especially coming in my part as first off, an entrepreneur, and then a professor, and then an academic librarian. I really have not spent a lot of time as a public librarian. So I'm very much in school, and I'm eager, if any of you are willing to go sideways for an hour and I can buy you a cup of coffee or longer, and you can tell me what you're seeing and what I'm missing, that will go a long way toward me keeping out of the weeds as we go forward. Within the library proper, though, the one insight that I just keep getting is that we're doing so much more than I think we could rightfully expect. And I'm saying that in the presence of colleagues here, not in the library, because what I don't want to have happen is to be radically altering the system by wading in and saying, really, we're doing this with so little, and then all of a sudden the whole system changes and it falls flat on its face. So I think I caught Diane off guard when I was talking with her within the first couple of days, and I mentioned that I specifically was hoping to be the least creative person on the team for the next 6 months, because I don't want to be radically altering that, if that's any help. But I'd very much like to talk with you individually to get your sense and to give you an opportunity to pick my brain. I think I was very transparent in the previous meeting, and I would be just as transparent today, which is to say that I think the view from 40,000 feet of what libraries do is what libraries have done for 3,000 years and will continue to do on a remarkable ways. It's when we get down into the trenches and the actual last mile and how we're doing what we're doing is when we can lose that focus and easily get sideways. One of the things I did want to mention, though, that just hats off to each of Maria and Amy and Diane for the good work that they're doing and that they've been doing in the library. I shouldn't mention this publicly right here, but I gotta say, the librarians from around the world were geeking out, totally geeking out over what you had set up with the lendable Oculus Goes. I mean, down to the granular level of, oh my gosh, this is the exact right size box, and it keeps everything all clipped in there, and you've got these stickies on it, so it all gets reassembled. It's all librarian stuff, right? And yet it's the magic that you guys are figuring out and sorting out, and then we can pass it along. So it's like, can I get a picture of the wrapper that thing came in so I can share it with like 1,000 other librarians so they can do the same thing and not have to reinvent the wheel? So it's kind of exciting. I don't know if that helps in terms of the overall view, but I did want to just quickly weed through some of these. The Nevada Momentum contract is one of the things that I think that the Carson City Library, thanks to your support, has been doing very, very well for at least a decade that I know of. The wealth that we have in the collection of photographs alone of engaged people in the library is just, it's hard to understate how impactful that will be. And I'm in the process right now of actively pulling bits and pieces of all that to tell the story of what libraries are doing around the state, but through the lens of the Carson City Library in the upcoming keynote that I'll be presenting at the Nevada Library Association. So it's really kind of exciting. But I wanted to mention that the Nevada Momentum contract in particular, you already know Kat Ellison, who has been there from the beginning. It's now actually going to be a slight shift that may or may not come up for approval by the board. It won't come up for approval. But I wanted to let you know that Kat has realized one of her long-term dreams, which is sort of a merger with a larger organization so she can focus on her photography. So it's actually RAD, something or other, DBA, Nevada Momentum.
Yeah. Nevada Momentum powered by RAD.
Powered by RAD, exactly.
something
That's,
like
I've
that.
got the wrong phrasing. But I wanted to make sure that you were aware that that shift is happening, and I've seen them in the library now at least every week, so they're still coming in and working on stuff. Priorities that are up in the near term here are the building our own budget here. Diane has mentioned some potential continuous improvement projects that we need to fix, including things like toilets that are held up by jacks and so on. So we'll be actively brainstorming that and trying to get your input here shortly. I also wanted to mention one of the most exciting things to me, just as a side note, when we saw that dollar amount that had shifted on the collection budget grant from the state library, the very next day, Diane and I had the state librarian and the person in charge of that budget in our office there and trying not to raise voices, but actually having a very real conversation about how is this that this is less than what's being stated in the NRS, and is this really the Nevada State Library's position or not? And we're actively looking to find other nickels and dimes so we can balance that up, because that helps our library, it helps other libraries statewide. Another piece of that equation that we had talked about perhaps in the previous meeting was the fact that in the state library, we, as in public libraries in the state, have for as long as I know, not had any visibility into how the state library goes about its process of building its budgetary ask. It's like this black box. It was a black box even in the state library. But I was inside of that black box, and there's no reason that it needs to remain a black box in the current state library, and is very excited about having it be an open thing. So here in another week or so in the Nevada Library Association meeting, one of the things that I'll be talking about is soliciting. I've already met with library directors around the state, but we're actively soliciting library directors to get together so that we can talk with one another and begin to surface the things that we're all doing that are the same, that we can maybe shove off over onto a state budget and ask the state to pay for that, to free up those dollars from our own individual budgets. I mean, an example is just the library catalog itself, or interlibrary lending of, as we're, driving books around from one spot to the other. This is something that libraries all around the state do. Databases are another. To the extent that we can line those up and say, these are things that we're all doing that are the same, if we can put them onto the state library's budgetary ask and let them pay for it, that is the good of this state, right? That saves them, because then the state is paying that cost up front rather than indirectly laundering it through all of the municipalities and counties in the state. So that conversation is very much going forward, and we're going to be, because the state librarian is going to be beginning the process of building that budget here in about 4 months. So we're actively feeding into that. In about 6 months, that'll be forward. Also at the same time, things that require some clarification. Jason, you had mentioned that some of the stuff in the chapters that pertain to libraries are a little bit fuzzy. There's some things that we might need some clarity on. And if it's a matter of just asking the Attorney General and getting that clarity for all of us, that's one thing. If it requires legislation or changes in the text, the state librarian, that's another part of what she needs to do, because in that same time frame, any potential asks for legislation or bill draft requests will go in. So it's an active collaboration. So any of us, when these thoughts are firing, please funnel them through myself or Diane, and we'll do our best to make sure they're represented. I think, though, that it is very exciting because, and I'm not alone in that perception. Our state librarian, Tammy, had mentioned that we're building on a track record now of success. The biennium before last, we were able to get a $500,000 one-shot funding this last biennium, most of that got plowed into ongoing funding and support of libraries. But it was really only $420,000, and that's not a lot in terms of the overall budget of the state. And it's certainly not a lot when you take that 420 and divide it by all the libraries in the state. So I think it's ours to actually tee it up and begin getting those asks out there. So it'll be exciting to see if we can get that through the Department of Admin, through the Governor's Finance Office, through a governor's recommendation, and then libraries around the state can stand up and support it with the legislature and see if we can take it home. So that's all the news that's printed to fit there. I just wanted to make sure that you're aware that that conversation is very much alive and taking place behind the scenes.
I have a question on that.
I'm sorry, yes, please.
So when we're talking about sharing with the state library, it sounds pretty efficient, right? To just kind of streamline activities that everybody does. Would you then anticipate some type of cost allocation coming back from the state library? And would that be more direct than the way it's done now? Is that what I'm hearing?
Why, thank you, Chair Balderson. I mean, you're absolutely right, and that is exactly the idea, that it should be much more efficient. And if it's more efficient, it would depend on what the particular expense is. In the example that I used for the library catalog is one, that's one of the largest single line items that any public library in the state has in its budget. What I'd really like to see would be that we could cue that up to say, this is just part of the Nevada Library Cooperative, and we send that check to the Nevada Library Cooperative because it's a collaboration, it's a cooperative. But instead, if the Nevada Library Cooperative could simply be, if that budget could just be paid for by the state, then we wouldn't have to send them the bill, they wouldn't have to send us that bill. And it would encourage more libraries to join that cooperative because, hey, let's get in on that free library catalog sort of a thing. And it does ultimately make it more efficient for the state and for all of the processes, because then if all of the libraries in the state are at least connecting to the same catalog, then we stand a chance of finding out. I mean, Amy could say, we don't need to buy that book because I could get it for you in a day from Las Vegas Clark County Library District and we'll be off and running. So that rather than each of us trying to build identical collections, we actually can build very deep localized collections that are much richer.
I suppose that would be my next question, though. We would then still retain ability to develop collections here locally?
Yes.
And I guess I would have a concern about our behemoth, Clark County, having so much of a controlling interest in collection development that might be a concern, but I suppose
Absolutely.
it sounds like it's not so
Oh,
much.
you're absolutely right. And I don't mean any disrespect to our behemoth colleagues down in Las Vegas, Clark County. They are, the 700-pound gorilla of libraries in the state. And that is what's interesting about, they're also not currently members of the Nevada Library Cooperative. But if they were, and if they were using that mechanism, it's one member, one vote. So even though they're a behemoth, they really wouldn't be swaying the other members that much. In the ideal scenario, what I think it would look like is that we would pool up these expenses into one way that sort of leaves this firewall between the state and us individually. Let them pay the bill, and then on our side, be able to say, well, there's an extra few $1,000s that can be used for, perhaps that continuous improvement project or any of a number of things. But you're right, it is a real concern. And I would say that it's a concern that the state library has to wrestle with, and the library cooperative has to wrestle with. And it's also one that we regularly wrestle with. In fact, the next line item there was that we went down and participated in the Nevada Library Cooperative Director meeting over in Fallon, which is exactly where this sort of conversation takes place, right? Where we have a bunch of us that are like, well, we think we've got this because we're librarians and we've got this all solved. And it's our job to say, well, no, we probably don't have this yet. We really need to sort this out. We need to figure out how do we keep a 700-pound gorilla from wagging the entire cooperative dog, if that makes sense. So it's very much an active, ongoing discussion. And my argument would be, from the state side, it's good if all of us participate together. From our local community standpoint, it's even better if we can access what all of these other libraries have without having to pay for it up front. I would and have submitted that that's exactly why the state library, one of the reasons why it exists. And so how can we encourage them to do their job more, better, faster, if that makes sense? Hey, I hope I'm speaking to your question, Trustee Balderson.
No, I certainly appreciate it, and I think I would just very strongly encourage the same conversation that you continue that even if you feel like you've already said it, say it again and again and again and again. Being a state worker myself, I can point to a few examples where we do things at Health and Human Services because when it was built, the system was actually built with Dieter in mind, and now we have to use it too. So just keeping that conversation going and advocating for our library, I'd certainly appreciate that.
Thank you. You're absolutely right. I wanted to mention that I was honored to be introduced. Oh, actually, before the library meet and greet that was hosted by the Friends of the Library was a success. Most of the Board of Supervisors were present, and I was honored to get the chance to meet with them and get an up-close sort of inspection from each of them. And then we followed that up within a matter of days when Diane introduced me during the public comment section, which is good. I also wanted to mention that I've just recently returned from the Internet Librarian Conference, it bills itself as being the largest, the world's leading technology conference for librarians. And it does have folks there from around the world. I was crossing paths with colleagues like Rolf Appel, who did the new library in Denmark, which is quite exciting. He's in Washington. And I was saying, hey, now that you're in Washington, if we're ever doing a project down here, would you be open to it? And he said, sure, give me a call. So a resource down the road, should we go that way. I also wanted to mention that I was able to frame the work that we're doing here in Carson on that stage. And it's so exciting, so fun to be able to do that. Started with a pre-conference half-day workshop teaching other libraries, how do you do this AR, VR stuff, and why do you do it, and what are some of the details. Then we had, I was one of two that co-hosted the conference opening event, where we actually took that same equipment, threw people under the bus, talked with them in detail. And then the track keynote on Wednesday, learning from leaders, literally doing the same thing that I was talking about with the Nevada Library Association keynote, which is selling the Carson City Library and its impact on its local community, because it is, in my opinion, an exemplar of how libraries have impact. And so it's exciting. I've already mentioned that we've got the upcoming keynote happening here. I also wanted to mention that we've got the Nevada Day Parade this Saturday. You're, of course, more than welcome to march with us. It's not as long as the Rose Bowl Parade, Diane assures me, which is good.
The Rose Parade's long.
But,
That's not a 5-mile parade.
and I think, again, our managers have really lined this out, so it won't be that bad. I think they've arranged for a car to take you back here to the library. If you care to join us, just park here and then we'll get you over there.
Glad to give you the detail. Yep.
And then, of course, Bonanza on the 29th. And just as an FYI, I've been invited and accepted to present to the Nevada Dems luncheon. And within a matter of days, had a similar request from the Republican version. Said yay, because when the first question came in about Nevada Dems, I said, let me check with Diane, because I don't know what the political landmines look like. And she said, we haven't been asked by the Republican version, but if we get asked, I'm sure we'd be happy to sell the library there too. And so That's exactly where we're at. And finally, I wanted to make sure to invite each of you, and to let you know that the library is, that we've got staff that are working at the Preserving Nevada Heritage Environment Summit. That's going to be at the State Library, not this Saturday, but next Saturday. And it's, I've got the flyers if you're interested. You're specifically invited. That's going to be from 1 to 5 p.m. And just before that, it's going to have the kickoff and the unveiling of the women's suffrage license plates in the same atrium at the State Library. So the State Librarian specifically requested that I pass along that invitation to you. And that's all the news that's fitted to print. If you're curious, though, I will just hand over the flyer and the program from Internet Librarian, so you can leaf through it and see what kind of trouble your kids are getting into.
So I just wanted to clarify a little bit, since we have a couple new board members, about the Nevada Momentum contract, because I know that was signed by the board even before I was on it. So they do some of our marketing, most of the photos and news, press releases, and I don't know, Diane, do they do anything else other than what I just mentioned? Like, that's kind of it.
Very sorry about that. We will be going out to redo the website here soon, since we've had the same format for quite a while, and a number of things are changing on the digital format as well. So you'll be hearing some more about that, but that's the only other input that we've had from the company on that.
Just so you guys know.
Chair Long, if I could
Yes.
jump in on that, I wanted to clarify. When I was doing my keynote yesterday, can I just say I'm so thankful to live here in Nevada. The Bay Area, good Lord. I mean, what would have been a 5.5-hour drive here took at least 12 hours, and that was on the weekend. But sorry, I'm going sideways. When I was doing my keynote, though, before I started, I had colleagues from the State Library, Ohio, show up, and we were talking briefly, and they said, yeah, we were talking about how we as the Carson City Library are collaborating with the State Library and other libraries in terms of advocacy, just trying to grassroots work it, and how it's working. And she led with, yeah, we just got cut by another 14% last year by their state. And that's what happens when we don't tell the stories of success. Because like it or not, we forget that libraries are impactful. So again, thank you for supporting that. It's one of the most insightful things that I've seen in libraries, because we don't tell our own stories very well. We don't prioritize it, and we don't put monies toward it. Carson City Library, thanks to this board, is different. Climbing
It's
back down
definitely a
off the
very valuable service, for sure. I mean, we see the value in it, and we've seen the results of the value of that service as well, so.
I don't think that there's any doubt. I mean, in my experience at the state and with this last biennium, if it were not for the stories that were showing up in the Nevada Appeal and these, staff showing up in the halls of the legislature to show people and throw them under the bus about this impact, it's just so easy to say, nah, we'll spend that money somewhere else. So again, well done.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to item number 6, the administrative reports, and we'll start with item 6A, access services.
That's Diane Baker for the record. Irma Reinhardt has the day off. So just to highlight a couple of things and to dovetail into what was just said, we do have some new equipment that has gone through access services that is going to be available for checkout, and you see some of the items there. These are available to individuals who have Premier cards, and with the checkout being available, and it's one of the new things that we're adding into the digital collection that is available. And then the last item that he had here about materials repair, we've had a fabulous cadre of volunteers that have done a lot of book repair. And one of our individuals, Sandy Devaney, who had a storehouse of knowledge on book repair, did retire last spring. But we were able to glean a fair amount from that, and we're trying to redevelop that, rekindle that with our own staff members. And some of our volunteers have dedicated many hours and years to that. But how long that will go on, we want to make sure we're prepared for when some of that talent sunsets from us. So that is one of the events there. The one other item I wanted to mention, just it addresses a concern that came up in the last meeting regarding information security, personal security with our online catalog system. So Irma has been pursuing that. I've been copied on. I believe just before he left on vacation, we did get some information back from the company that does Polaris, which is the Innovative Information Incorporated, III, and we'll be able to present that information to you. So that is in the works for you.
Thank you, Diane. And we'll move on to item 6B, collection development.
Amy Lauder, Collection Development Manager for the record. I do have a couple of things here, and I have a couple of short updates that didn't make it onto this sheet as well. And I do want to talk about them, I think, a little bit in the context of some of the structures that we work within, because that's the theme of today. We have some new people. We have a lot of organizations and layers that we work with in this particular. We have a new update on our patron-facing online public access catalog, which is a discovery layer for our Overdrive ebook service. The public access catalog is, again, basically the public-facing view of the catalog that is in our ILS, which she was just talking about, Polaris, by III. It is administered by the cooperative, the Nevada Library Cooperative, and Cindy O. So she was instrumental in getting this piece installed for that software. So both this and the Overdrive service at this point now are both through the cooperative. We used to have Overdrive just as our entity here at the Carson City Library. By going in with the co-op, we were able to triple the collection, as I told you guys last year, and get a lot more use and a lot more value out of the money that we are spending. That co-op does consist of most of the smaller libraries in the state. We're the biggest one. And then we have like Elko, Humboldt, Fallon, and then Lyon County, and then some other ones after that. So this is a nice tool. Both it makes it possible to see all the versions of a book in the catalog. If you just want the title, you don't care how you read it, whether it's in print or large print or audio or ebook or what, you get to see them all together at the same time. You can also now see your ebooks alongside your list of physical items you have checked out on your account. So it kind of pulls that all together into one space, which is nice. Another one on here, we have another new electronic resource. And this is kind of going along with our still dragging out, seeing what's going forward with our current resource for teaching software skills, lynda.com. Still dragging out. So we are adding the second one, Knowledge City, as a supplementary resource, and we may be moving forward with that after the year is over, depending on how things go. But that it's going to be, I think it's going to be a good resource, especially for our beginning users. I know our collections, our creative learning staff who teach computer classes are really excited about it. So we are looking forward to that. That just went up last week, so that's good. What did I talk about? This afternoon, I was at a meeting with at the state purchasing office, actually. as part of the committee that is determining what state databases we are going to be moving forward with, because like Todd was speaking of, on top of that, we have our funding, we have the co-op funding, we have state funding in several, part of it is collection development grants, part of it is state databases. So that just leverages that purchasing power. It's much more cost effective to purchase for a larger service area than for each entity within the service area to purchase for themselves. So that's it's so much more cost effective. So that was a new process for me. It was very interesting. I think we accomplished what we set out to do. So we have our next steps, and Sue Lynn over at the state will be moving forward with that. So that's great. Then next week, Maria and I are presenting at the Nevada Library Association conference, specifically about our partnership with the Boys and Girls Club, which has been ongoing for many years, and I'll kind of one of the events that kind of spiked interest in that was last year we were able to use the state collection grant funding from the 2017 legislature, which was much higher than it had been ever since the recession that year, that biennium. We were able to use the second half of that to kind of kickstart, refresh the library book collections in that space, and also create more interest around some of the other services that we provide in that space. So that was a lot of information. If you have questions about where different things come from or how some of these things work, you can just ask.
Can you just give me like a little like
a little
visual
flow chart?
Yeah.
You're serious, aren't you?
No, I'm not.
I can. The basic things aren't too hard, like I said. There's us, there's the city, co-op, state is most of the things we work with. So occasionally federal, but
It's hard to keep track of like the things within.
it gets
like,
even
where
more
they go.
confusing. The state library is also part of the co-op, but not in. And yeah,
Right. Yeah.
But don't worry about that. It shouldn't affect anything you do. So.
I just have a question on the whole Linda LinkedIn thing. Like,
Sure.
do we still even have access to that? When is that
We
ending?
still have access. I spoke to them last week. They are pausing to evaluate what they should do on their end. I talked to one of their representatives. Says, well, the executives have to decide if they're going to. Basically, they would have to build or significantly change a platform to keep libraries all the way that we want to be on there, which I knew. He said that would be very expensive. I said, I know.
Can't maintain the platform that is currently on, like the way it
I
is.
assume they have some reason for sunsetting it. I don't know specifically what. It has been around for quite a while, so it might just be nearing the end of its life. So
So it's kind
whether
of waiting
it's
still.
really onerous to maintain or there's something that's not going to be supported anymore, I don't know. Not part of that conversation, but it has been around for well over 5 years, so it's entirely possible it's just reaching the end of its life. So yeah, they have told me that they will not kick us off until they know their next steps. And I have told them that I will not pay them until they give us an invoice for services we will actually get. So we're sitting tight and waiting.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, we'll move along to item 6C, creative learning activities.
Maria Clusta, Creative Learning Manager for the record. To kick things off, so this month, October 4th through 10th, we had our World Space Week programming, which was pretty awesome. This is an international event. The theme this year was the Moon Gateway to the Stars, so we had basically a week's worth of programming, all space-oriented. So we had virtual reality, we had the NASA Solar System Ambassador back, Dr. Steve Metzger, for a talk. We also had space-themed story times, which were super popular. We had like 54 people at one of our sessions for that. Yeah, so very fantastic week. Yeah. And a lot, some of those resources too for the family story time, we actually use some of the NASA at My Library resources, which is really great. As that kind of goes into, we also released our 2 NASA Explorer backpacks. These we received through that grant project. Really amazing. I was going to bring one tonight, but they're both checked out already. But basically, yeah. Inside, they have a really nice telescope. There's about 4 different books. There's also a coding activity and a couple other items inside. But they're definitely meant for the whole family, a little bit for everyone to use. So the only requirement we have for that is that a family member has a Premier Library card and they can check it out for 2 weeks at a time. But yeah, we're really excited about that. And the fact that we received these through that NASA at My Library opportunity, depending on how the circulation is, we are actually looking at potentially adding more to the mix. So that could include backpacks that are geared towards maybe older kids. We might also look at having Spanish language backpacks as well. So we're keeping that open. The other thing that I wanted to talk about real quick is next week, which is our Bonanza event. So this is the 3rd annual Bonanza, partnering again with Carson City Parks and Rec. We have big sponsor, Southwest Gas, who was a big part of making this all happen. So there's over 50 local businesses that are going to be participating. I believe it's a total of 55. So the whole gymnasium here in the community center is going to be filled with vendors. They're going to have their haunted house again, food vendors outside, carnival games. The library is going to have a bunch of STEAM activities again. So we'll be making yarn monsters, catapults. We'll have a science lab outside where they get to make balloon monster, like a little experiment activity. So we'll have something for all ages. And then again, we're going to have our costume contest, which is super popular. This year, we are adding a new category for families because each year we always see so many families dressed up together. So we made that as an additional category this year for people to participate in. So, yeah. Do you guys have any questions about anything or?
Where are we at? What time of the evening are you doing the costume contest?
That is at 6:30.
Okay. So
6:30 to 7.
If we have really outstanding
Yeah.
costumes come through our vendor, we can tell them they should go into the
Yes, definitely.
contest.
Tell them to go over there at 6:30, and that would be fantastic.
Thank you.
Oh, which I forgot to mention too, Todd was also going to be a judge for Bonanza this year. That wasn't mentioned earlier. Yeah, so he'll be one of the judges. They'll have 3 judges there for like the best booth, best decorations for booths. So
What time does that start?
the event starts from 4 till 7 o'clock.
Okay.
Do you have enough of the plastic bottles for the monster event?
Yes, I believe so. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
And Diane Baker, for the record, I can't help but say that actually the Carson City Library was the catalyst for a lot of this moving forward because 4 years ago, the library decided to have a big, a Halloween event with different things plus a costume contest. And when we had that costume contest, we had people lined up outside, a big line outside the library, that it was just phenomenal, where we couldn't get everybody in at one time. And that was the catalyst to go, okay, this is big, we could take it bigger. And that's where the partnership with Parks and Rec started. And so that's how we're at the 3rd annual after 4 years. So, yeah, it was amazing.
Just a little sidelight here. Friends of the Carson City Library will be one of those vendors over here in the community center. We will be handing out free books and free candy. So we just donated buy labels on 12 boxes of books yesterday, so we're all ready to go.
Nice, thank you, guys. All right, moving on to item 6D, administrative update and activities.
And that's me, Diane Baker, for the record. So one thing that you have up at your desk, or at your site, you should have one of the skulls. This was for the paint, sip, and chip. It actually was last night at the Nevada State Museum. This is the second year of the partnership that the Carson City Library has had with Arts and Culture and the Nevada State Museum. And so you each have one of the templates that was used, and these were all handled, cut out, and on our laser engraver machine in the makerspace, and Creative Learning spearheaded making sure that there were 150 skulls for the process this year. So you'll be able to see that the display becomes part of a community art display in the Nevada State Museum for Dia de los Muertos. So that will be in about a week. When that will be part of the display. So you're seeing a couple things that were produced as part of last year's event. A couple of things to bring you up to date on. What I called assessments. We have just about wrapped up a cash handling audit. We did have the individuals on site. It's something that's going through a number of departments. At Carson City, we were one of the ones identified. We did have the on-site visit. We're still getting, hopefully today was the last question. That's what they said. You know, I've been getting email questions for clarifications and input, and we'll look to see what the outcome of that is, and so we'll share that with you when we do have it. The other inspection that we had through risk management, we had safety inspection with the fire marshal. That was on October 14th, I believe. And again, on-site building review, there were several findings. Some of them were really good to have them addressed, and things that we wouldn't have noticed, like our exit signs and the batteries and the like, need significant attention. Majority of them aren't operating at the level they're supposed to. Some typical things, outlet and cord management, we've addressed most of those things. There's a few other items that facilities has on their list, small fix for the most part, and we will have the reinspection for that list will be on November 15th for the reevaluation of that. But the good thing is we've had some of the curbs that are supposed to be no parking, those have been repainted, and so this has really sparked a couple of things that are nice to have them updated and taken care of. And then the last, you've heard about a number of these already, but this is just the list of things ongoing at this point. And the one thing I do want to clarify on the last two items, the fiscal year 2020 state collection, that is truly a fiscal year 20. The last one really should be FFY, that's the federal fiscal year 2020, is what those competitive grants, and we've have information that they will be coming out, they're just still currently on hold. But we will participate in the competitive grant round again this year when that becomes available. I had one other quick announcement. Finally, we just announced the application for the vacancy for the one trustee position that we have available has gone out. And so if you know anybody that is interested or think would be a good candidate, it is open through November 8th. We've already sent it out. I've asked for it to go out through the Friends, their email list, and also, we'll put it out on social media and also ask for it to be published in Carson Now. But yeah, if you have any live ones, send them to that, to the site there, please. Any questions?
None
Okay.
for me.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Diane. All right, moving on to item number 7, board member announcements and requests for information. So I have a couple things under here. One, I just wanted to check with you guys because we haven't talked about this since you've been on the board. Is the time okay for you guys, or do you want to move it? We had at one point been at 5:30, but then we moved it back to 5. So I just wanted to check with you guys and Phyllis. If you have any input.
5 o'clock's fine with me. I only work 2 minutes away, so
Okay.
it's pretty easy for me to get here on time.
Yeah, I figured the earlier you start, the earlier you finish, right?
Yeah.
So
That's a big one too.
Real.
And it's football.
it's gonna
so-
get dark
That's
sooner.
true.
And,
Yeah. I just wanted to double check with you guys because we haven't talked about
that.
it. So the other item I was going to ask about the board member, but we got that. And then the other thing that I did talk to our DA about is our use of personal email. And so I just wanted to let you guys know that, did you want to talk about this at all or do you want me? I'm gonna let you.
Okay. I know the bearer of bad news. Sometimes in a voluntary board like this, you just use personal email because that's the one you check most frequently, and it's the easiest way for you to keep updated. And it's certainly, there's nothing legally prohibiting that. The danger that the chair and I wanted to make sure you are aware of is that if you are using a personal email account for library business, that does open your personal email up to a public records request. And we would have to look through that and, kind of parse through what's a public record and what's not. The easiest way to avoid that, from our perspective, is to, I believe every trustee is entitled to have a carson.org email account. And although it's somewhat cumbersome, if you can restrict your library business to that, that enables us to have all records that are public records in one single place, and we don't have to go looking through your personal email at any point. So that would be the recommendation from my office.
That was a concern that I just
Right.
had requested and wanted to make sure we all are aware of that going forward.
I feel like, was it Lyon County there was a texting issue, not an email issue? You want to talk about
Yeah,
that?
and texting remains an issue. I mean, if you're texting about library business, your texting is a public record. I don't think the city is ponied up for separate phones for everybody, unfortunately. So we do what we can. Do be mindful, though, if you are texting on a personal phone about library business, that, at some point could be subject to such a request. So you want to be cautious about that. But at this point, I don't really have a recommended fix for that. The fix is a separate phone, and that's just not a
Don't do it
practical
or
reality right now.
Yeah. Oh, use your email, yeah.
Can I add a
Yeah, go ahead.
So I think last time during this this item, I had asked for a couple things. I feel like I'm like the needy trustee over here. So the first thing I'd asked for was some type of vision statement from our new director, and I feel like that's been satisfied. Another item that I had asked about had to do with legislative advocacy, and I think that that's been pretty clearly stated about, at this point, we're in budget concept mode, right? And then maybe something we want will land in the agency request for the State Library and Archive, and maybe that'll land in the governor's recommended budget. And if it does, we'll be happy to support the thing that we want. And if it doesn't, we'll happy to go to the legislature and tell them to put it in. But the other thing that I had asked about, and I didn't see represented here tonight, had to do with the census. So I'm hoping that there's still something happening and that a lack of reporting doesn't mean a lack of action.
Diane Baker for the record. Yes, yes indeed, and we are still in development, mode for making sure that we are ready to be one of the public sites. Since everything is online this time, or that's the preferred mode, and they don't go to the others until quite a ways down the line. I believe we have an appointment pending with one of the Census 2020 regional individuals. So I think early November, I think, is when we will be meeting with them again. And I believe I had mentioned we are going to be in the mode of working with the State Library and Archives through their state data center and working with the initiatives that they have to make sure that all the public libraries branches around the state are ready to accept and to assist in ensuring that we get a good count, a complete count.
Thank you.
And Todd Goldgrove, if I can chime in too, Chair Balderson, those of you that know Tammy will know what I mean when she's talking about everyone in that operation is named Justin because it's just in time all the time. But, and I mean that with all respect, right? Because I think it's also just incredible what can come out of
there
it.
you go.
But when it comes to the census, the Lieutenant Governor Kate Marshall is chairing that, and we're very much entangled. It's not entirely clear what that entanglement's going to look like. I've heard several things from Tammy already. Everything from, we need to get Kate Marshall over to the Carson City Library to record a PSA in that green room in the Digitorium and go from there. We're ready. I know that she will be at the NLA meeting, and this is part of something that I'm supposed to be shepherding her around, just to begin bridging that, and we'll see where that goes. And I wanted to clarify, if I could, the earlier part, when you were describing about the process of getting some of these asks in there. And it was all perfect up to the last minute when it was like, well, if it doesn't get in the governor's recommended budget, then we'll ask the legislature to put it there, which is kind of where we were at this last legislative biennium, where we all stepped up because we hadn't had access to the previous budget builds. And it wasn't there. And so we showed up as libraries and just said, well, gee, it'd be really nice if you'd give us some more money. And the legislators were saying, yeah, you and everybody else is saying that we got no hooks to put it to in the budget. So really the goal is to get these asks and really shoot them for the moon kind of asks. Past the first vanguard is the Director of the Department of Administration, because State Library is under that. And then the Governor's Finance Office, and then the Governor. And then hopefully it's in there so that we can advocate for it at the legislature and say, yeah, this is really a great idea. Even if it just gets in there and they're asking only for a nickel, then we can get it up from there. But if it's not in there, we don't have much to work with, if that makes some sense.
I certainly appreciate that, and I hope that it makes it that far. I know there's plenty of initiatives that get dropped from agency requests to governor's rec. So between those two,
That's exactly it.
we hope we can bridge that.
Well, and I think so much of the good work, including the work that we're doing with, or that the State Library is doing with DHHS now as well. I believe that they just wrote using the workforce development tool, the career developer, into the 5-year plan, which is kind of crazy and unexpected and exciting, and bodes well for libraries and the larger parts of the government working together. It'll be interesting to see where that comes from. One of the things that really is driving the bus there is that by working together, then we can begin leveraging some of these other pots of monies to pay for some of the things that libraries are doing. So we're all trying to do the Lord's work here. Thank you.
So just for the trustees, well, I mean, anybody in here really, but I was going to say that Phyllis dropped off for the trustees the membership application. You can do it online. She encouraged us to go online and do it so they can count our, up our online count. Because that's pretty new,
All
right?
your friends and family, yes,
That's
that
right.
is new.
And
They're
it's a
online.
bargain, too.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, it is.
So it's good for us trustees to be on, friends.
Yeah, to be members, participate when you can. I know when you're all working, it's hard, but if you have a skill that you could share once in a while.
Yeah. All right. Anything else? We good? All right, so we'll move on to item number 8, public comment. If any members of the public would like to come up and speak. All right, seeing none, we'll move on to item number 10, adjournment.
I move to adjourn.
Adjourned.